Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head on UATV. I'm Oles Garjuk. It looks like Strasbourg has developed a mechanism for lifting sanctions against Russia. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a resolution about restoring the Russian delegation's participation in the institution. To discuss how these actions will reflect on Ukraine, we are joined in the studio by Maxim Yali, a senior researcher for the Institute of World History of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Hello and thank you for coming.
Hello.
What in particular is proposed by these recent resolutions?
Well, actually, I don't want to bother the listeners, the viewers, with all the details. I guess...
what was the general idea?
The biggest worry for Ukraine is that this resolution gives a possibility for lifting sanctions against Russian Federation, which is not now, as you know, a participant of the Parliamentary Assembly temporarily. And of course they are trying to get back and working on that directions with some members of the Assembly. And also we can view this adopting of this resolution as a sign from European Union that the possibilities of restoring relations between EU and Russia under conditions that Russian Federation follows and implements Minsk agreements is quite possible.
Mm-hmm. Did Ukrainian delegation try to amend this document?
Well, of course, they tried their best, and as we know, the results were pretty close. But the final result we know. But as I have already mentioned, we shouldn't worry too much about the possibilities and the results, because it has only recommendational character and no other influences.
Mm-hmm. But what was the general reaction on the amendments of the Ukrainian delegation? Was anyone listening actually to the Ukrainian position?
Of course, there were debates as usually on every point, and as I have already mentioned before, that not every amendment was adopted. I mean, which were given by opposite side, Hungary and Romania. So there was discussion and debates on every point of both sides, and some amendments have been adopted, some not. It's usual process.
How do you think? Why would the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe would restore Russian delegation? What's the hidden intention of this document?
Not hidden. As I told you, it's a sign for restoring relationships between EU and Russian Federation in general under conditions which I have already mentioned, because EU and Germany, the leading country, yes, in EU, and France, both members of Normand format, and EU as a whole, have many times stated that restoration of relationships between EU and the Russian Federation to the level it was before 2014 is impossible unless Minsk agreements implemented into real life. And that's actually just a sign and pushback, I would say, step back towards Russia, that the chances are pretty high, and it will be a next step from the point of from the side of European Union under conditions so Russian Federation takes real steps to implement Minsk agreements.
Mm-hmm. How do you think? Does this mean that Europe is actually tired of sanctions against Russia?
Well, we should also admit, of course, that not Europe, but European business, which, of course, would like to restore, so to say, business as usual with Russian Federation. And, of course, first of all, it concerns German companies, Austrian companies, which really do suffer from sanctions, and It involves billions of dollars. And of course, they also put a pressure through their lobbies in parliaments, both in Germany, in Austria, and in other countries. Italy, of course, Hungary, Bulgaria, as we know, the biggest lobby Russian Federation has, and in total on European Parliament to lift the sanctions.
But as far as I know, PACE stands for values, not for businessmen. Is there any money or finances involved in the situation about this resolution?
Well, it's, you know, such a question. I can't say for sure, and nobody will admit.
Because as far as I remember, Russian Federation refused to pay membership fee.
That's quite another, I would say, thing. Yes, of course. In this case, we can talk about money issue because, yes, as you mentioned, Russian Federation denied to pay its fee to the budget of Council of Europe, and also put a condition that it will restore the payments only after its delegation comes back to the Assembly. And also we know that money do matter, and for Assembly as well. And of course it's also just like a sign that Assembly will gain, I would say, financially in case Russian Federation comes back, and that's why it also was such, I would say, a reason for adoption of this resolution.
Once the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Torbjörn Jagland, said that there are two ways out: to preserve values or preserve the Council of Europe itself. Do you think Council of Europe is so much dependent on money coming from Russia?
Well, I guess you shouldn't confuse, and this quotation, it was just a piece of, I guess, bigger context, and I would say you shouldn't simplify to that level that the future of Council of Europe depends on Russian Federation's fee. It's of course not.
No, it's not like depends in general, but is there a big role that Russia plays in the Council of Europe?
Well, if its delegation now does not participate in the work of the Assembly, that means it's not that high. Yeah, right. And it's possible. It doesn't mean that if there is no Russian Federation involved in the work of the Assembly, the work of it is blocked. No, not at all. And as we see, the process is going on.
So then why would PACE, again the same question, why would PACE adopt the resolution if it should stand for values but not for business? What's your opinion?
My opinion is that this resolution, I would say, it was another, I can say, argument on on the process of negotiations between, from one side, EU, France and Germany as members of Normandy format, also US, on another level, right? Last meeting between Volker and Surkov on implementation of Minsk agreement, and we should also treat the adoption of this resolution as a signal to Russia for their future benefits if it makes real steps forward on implementation security part of Minsk agreements.
Is there any reason to worry that European Union might lift the sanctions?
Well, I guess it won't be a strategy, because if Russian Federation comes back to the work of the Assembly, I mean its delegation, it doesn't mean that financial, economical sanctions will be lifted as well.
Sure.
There is a long way, far cry, I would say, from reality. And of course, it's just, as I mentioned, first step, political. I would say sanctions to be lifted firstly, yeah, not economical and financial ones.
Do you know what was the Ukrainian delegation reaction?
On what?
On this resolution.
Well, of course, negative. It goes without saying. I will.
Obviously, but do they have any plans? I don't know, to conquer somehow.
There is nothing
that they can do.
We can do firstly, and as I told you, there is nothing crucial in an adoption of this resolution.
Okay, thank you so much for this conversation.
You're welcome.
That was Maxim Yali, a senior researcher for the Institute of World History of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.